Ken, I'm just going to turn your sound down. Okay. Okay, everybody hear me? So today we're going to be talking about oral presentation 2. And I'm going to turn this down a little bit. Or sorry, oral presentation 1. Sorry, good point. I'm just going to skip 1 and go straight to 2 there. Which is going to happen in, I think, 2 weeks. Is that correct, Ken? Okay. All right, so what is this presentation about? So Dr. Tallman talked to you about the basic goal, slide design, but maybe he hasn't told you everything about the presentation.
What would you say about the presentation? Anybody have any comments?
How was it doing?
Yeah, so feel free, take me apart. Okay, so I was kind of mumbling.
I was kind of wandering around a little bit, which maybe I do even normally. I didn't seem to bring much energy. Wasn't really looking at you, not much eye contact.
So hopefully you notice the difference, right? Maybe I do it all the time. Ken, what do you think? Was it extra bad?
Yeah, okay.
So, you
First thing in your whole presentation, you bring the energy, okay? Look at the audience, move as Dr. Tallman told you, with
good posture, grounded, good body language. And I was doing very bad body language there, okay? So that's you. Bring yourself, bring your energy. You also have to think, well, obviously, what are you going to present? So, make the stick principles. What is my core message? What do I want the audience to remember? They're not going to remember that much. What do I want? And who is my audience? What do they care about? How much do they know about this topic? That's going to tell me how to pitch it. Okay, so what you're doing in oral presentation 1 is it's a review of your graphics. So the model of this is it's a formal review with management. You'll do this many times in your career. Going into your management, you're explaining how things are going. Can you hear okay, or are we? Let me turn it up a little. Is that better or not? Okay, sorry, we're randomly searching for the volume. So what we want to get across in our, what your CI is evaluating, because your CI is behaving as a project manager, is what's the vision and motivation for this project? Is it clear and compelling, or is it baffling and non-existent? And how is it progressing? Is the team executing well, making good progress, or maybe there have been some difficulties, but the team has acknowledged them, they know what the difficulties are, they have a credible plan to recover, or this is not what you want, progress is poor, and the team recovery plan is also unclear. And this happens all the time. When I was in industry, I would sometimes have meetings where a team is presenting to me, and I am getting increasingly worried about the status of the project they're on, but they don't seem worried. And that's bad, right? If they come in and they say, okay, we've had these challenges, but here's how we're going to recover, that can be okay. You don't want to be management going, what the heck, this looks terrible, but the team seems super happy. That's a bad situation. Okay, so what's the core message? Your core message is that the project's worthwhile and the team can deliver on it. That's what you want your CI to walk away with. And again, that's because that's the model we're following here, review with management. So your CI represents your project manager. He or she assigns a grade, so you're trying to impress him or her. And you also are presenting in front of your peers. So they're your secondary audience. You also want them to understand what you're doing. You want to avoid the curse of knowledge. So your CI is reasonably familiar with milestone 2 and what your project is about, but they don't know everything. And usually when people are presenting, they assume their audience knows more than they do. Because you've been immersed in this, you know a lot about what you're doing. You could easily use shorthand and jargon that's going to lose your CI, and you're going to get not a great grade. Okay? This happens all the time in technical presentations. I go to conferences where experts in my area, computer chip design, are presenting to other experts, and they still lose their audience all the time because they've been working on the following particular research problem for the last 3 years, and they implicitly are assuming everybody's been there with them, and they haven't. So even experts in the field are lost. You also don't want to assume the audience knows why something's important. You care about this, don't assume your audience cares. You got to make them care. Okay? So a really bad thing to do would do a deep dive into some tricky code detail. Your CI probably does not understand what the heck you're talking about because he or she wasn't coding with you, and they also probably don't care. So this is really bad. Okay, so let me give you an example of an extreme curse of knowledge. So Fidel Castro, former ruler of Cuba, gave a 3-hour speech on Che Guevara, so Latin American revolutionaries, application of dialectics. There's a lot of complicated words in there. Do you agree, Ken? These are complicated words? All right, so what does this mean? Let's break this down. So dialectic, my older brother is a professor of English and film studies, so he's words like this all the time, so I always have to look him up. Dialectic is a complicated word, the art of investigating or discussing the truth of opinions. So even after reading the definition, I find this a difficult concept to get my head around. It's kind of like a void pointer in C or C++. Like, what the heck is that? It's a pointer to nothing? What is this? So who did he give this talk to? Sorry, I should have asked you first. Should be using the principle of unexpected, make you guess. So I gave it away a little bit. Who do you think an appropriate audience would be for a 3-hour lecture on the application of dialectics by a Latin American revolutionary?
Your brother.
Yeah, maybe my brother. Actually, I've had arguments with my brother for several hours as well, which maybe nobody else is interested in on this kind of topic. So I'm going to go to, I think, C07. You look like you had an idea. What do you think? Who's an appropriate audience? Right? So yeah, philosophy undergrads, for sure, especially at parties, okay? Buy a philosophy undergrad a beer, talk to him or her about dialectics for a few hours, have it. Okay, his audience, an audience of 6-year-olds. He'd been brought in to talk to an audience of kindergarten students, and most of you probably don't have children, but trust me, it's hard to maintain the attention of 6-year-olds for long periods of time, and giving them a 3-hour talk on dialectics is probably not going to do it. Okay, so it's an extreme example of he knows a lot about this, he cares a lot about this, he assumes his audience is there with them. Don't assume that. Okay, so step 1, we figured out what we're trying to do. Step 2, make a high-level plan and outline. So this is a project, there's project management making a presentation, just like building software. So what's interesting to your audience? What's going to show your team and project well? Because that's what you're trying to do here. So we might focus on fast response time. We've got a lot of detail that you can see, but it's still highly usable. And we made a super cool special feature called night mode, where we adapt to our environment. Okay, so that's what Dr. Tallman and I came up with. That's our focus. That's how we take this to the next level. Okay, we've got those high-level ideas. Now we make an outline. Who owns what slides? So we're going to try to get some parallel development going, just like with code. So we've got to make a plan. Who owns which slides? So we're going to give a little introduction, historical context, talk about response time, talk about usability, our special feature, and then conclude. Okay, we've only got 8 to 10 minutes. How many slides? Well, Dr. Tallman already talked about this. How many slides could we do, Ken?
Well, I would be shooting for a slide a minute.
Okay.
A little bit more. Some of you said 10 slides. That could be reasonable. Maybe a few more. Maybe 12.
Yeah, so
14.
we've got to be pretty careful with our slide count here. So turn this down. So we have to be pretty careful with our slide count. And we're going to make that slide count right now so that we don't wind up making tons of slides that we have to throw away. We're busy, we don't have time to do that. So we've got some separator slides to just introduce concepts. Those are pretty fast. So I'm going to budget 0 minutes for that. Every content slide, I'm going to budget approximately a minute. So maybe 10 slides, maybe a few separators in there as well. So not a lot. And you want to give yourself time to iterate. So get the slide deck made after you've created this outline and plan on iteration. Okay, so we want to assign owners so that we don't have one person making all the slides. So here's our ownership plan. And time budgets. Okay, so maybe this is kind of obvious, but why do you do an outline? It's just like planning software. We don't want to make a whole bunch of slides and then throw them away. So we got to get this budget of how many slides there are and who does what. We're going to get parallel development going by assigning different slides to different individuals. And that makes our commitments clear, less chance of things going off the rail. Okay, now we got to create and refine our slides, be visual. Most people put too many words on their slides. So audiences will not understand complex slides, so keep it simple. If there's a lot on your slides, they're spending their time reading. And humans only have one language processing center. So they can read or they can pay attention to you, but they generally can't do both. Put a few bullets up, they can read them quickly and they're back paying attention to you. So the CEO of Altera, company where I spent much of my industrial career, was a very gifted speaker. Like listening to him speak was kind of amazing. He'd ask a question, and even if he didn't answer your question, you kind of at the end of it went, wow, that was kind of an amazing answer. Didn't actually answer my question, but he confused me so much I thought he did. And one of his philosophies is he wouldn't basically have no slides or nothing on them, because he said, I look smarter if I'm telling you things and there's nothing on the slides. Like I know things and not even on the slides. So not having some of the information on the slides captures people's interest, makes you seem like more of an expert. I personally like to put the key points on the slides, but very succinctly. The reason is some people are visual. I'm visual. I learn better by seeing things than by listening. So if you put the key points up there, I'm going to understand them faster and better. But you keep them very brief. Don't make them sentences. So on my slides, I never use sentences because it's fewer words. The person spends less time reading, and I'm not tempted to read them. It makes no sense for me to read them because they're not sentences. So I seem like a person who literally cannot string together a grammatical sentence. Okay, practice. Speak out loud. So don't practice just by looking at your slides and saying, I would say this, I would say that. Stand up. Put the screen where it would be approximately a real presentation and speak to it. Time yourself, see how long it takes, find the right spots where you don't have good transitions or you stumble over your words and keep going over that over and over. And you're not trying to memorize it. As Dr. Tallman said, you're looking for a smooth but natural delivery. So you don't sound natural if everything's memorized, but to be smooth, you have to have practiced a few times so you know ways to speak to the slides. And if you can't speak to a slide, that's a sign you need to edit it. I don't really know how to explain it this way. Maybe the order's wrong, it's too much detail, change it. So you can have some iteration. And when you time it, you may find it's too long. So you have to cut some content. Okay, so it's going to be agile. You're going to make a draft presentation and plan on editing it. Okay, so let's talk about some nuts and bolts of how you make good slides. Okay, here's an example. So let me give you a moment to look at this. I'm going to speak to it. We have night mode. Our night mode reduces brightness but maintains color contrast. All of our set color calls have an extra indirection to obtain the brightness scaled color. You can see how it works down here. And that's what allows us to adapt to our environment and give you the right color scheme for your environment. What do you think?
Take like 20 seconds, talk to people around the table.
And tell us what you think of this. Well, I'll give you a little longer. So take 30 seconds, talk to people. What do you like? What do you not like about the slide the way I just presented it? I like to use bullets, but never sentences. Okay, because if you put short bullets on, you get across your key concept, but you will not read them. Does that make sense? Because you can't read them because they're not a sentence. So I wouldn't personally put a full sentence anywhere. Does that make sense? So this does. It puts full sentences on. So this is not a good example. Okay, so. Okay, so we're back. Anybody have any thoughts? It's the best ever. There are ways to improve it. What do you think? So if you can press your microphone, or you just put your hand up and do big voice. What do you think?
So
So the whole class, no one has any ideas to improve it.
You're just like perfect.
Okay, let's go to B12. B12. You're on the air.
Well,
You got to speak really loud. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I agree. This code is kind of ridiculous. Nobody can read this code quickly enough. There's no context. It's the wrong audience. My CI doesn't care about my low-level code. It's the wrong format for me trying to present that. This is pretty close to, Fidel Castro presenting dialectics to kindergarten students, right? Like wrong audience, wrong link, totally bad. Anything else? Is everything else good or any other changes? Totally agree. Okay, so I violated my own rule here. I said, don't put complete sentences on. These are complete sentences. Too many words that I'm going to read them. Also, probably the wrong sentence. Not clear why this matters. Any other thoughts about this? There's not a lot good here. Feel free to pile on and tell me something else that's bad. There's another bad thing I would say here. Okay, so what do you think, Ken? Anything else is bad about this?
Well, I mean, I was just going to echo B12 that the two bullet points don't really tell us why night mode is important. It reduces brightness. So what? Why would we want to do that? And so there's no message, right?
Yeah. So I guess it's bad in many ways. So who cares? We didn't say why we did this. Too wordy. Okay, probably tempted to read it. My audience can't read it fast enough either. Inappropriate to have code on here. It's not appropriate for the format or my audience. Also, it's not visual. Okay, so I missed the simple concept of made to stick because I got too many words. It's not visual, so it is not very concrete. So lots of mistakes. Okay, here's my second try. So we have a night mode feature, which reduces brightness for nighttime use. What do you think of this? You guys like it better? Any thoughts? Is this good? Bad? It's different. So if anybody's got any thoughts, just press your button and tell me what you think. Somebody's got to have a thought on this one. Do you like it or not like it? So I'm going to go to C07. Thank you. Okay, C07. Say it loud. What do you think of this? Right. So still doesn't say why. It says we have a night mode, shows me a picture. Okay, so more visual, less cluttered, but still, who cares? Yeah, so okay, it's a good point. So maybe a contrast would make this more clear. Okay, so yeah, more visual, so that's good, but still not clear why do I care. Maybe I can put a picture of my dog up here, say I have a dog, right? It's not clear why do I care. Okay, I've also put, it's kind of a minor issue here, but it's a flaw in the slide design. This is 16-point font, it's too small, right? That's kind of hidden by Zoom, but I've got a point down here that is also hard to see. And I just shouldn't use fonts that size. There's no reason on this slide. Okay. Here's my next try, night mode. It takes 60 minutes for your eye to adapt to the dark fully. If you have a bright screen at night, you're driving, it's distracting. And in fact, we find that despite there being less traffic on the roads at night, we get more accidents. So we've taken this problem into account in our map. We are choosing colors and road widths to maintain, reduce brightness, but maintain contrast. So it works better at night, and we tested it with 5 individuals that preferred it to Google Maps. Okay, what do you think? How do you like this?
Okay, so
Anybody
anybody
like this? Or is it just another myth? So, if you haven't ever spoken in the class, this is your chance. You can press that big button. You're probably wondering, what does this button do? You can press it now and try it out. Okay? All right, so C07, we're going back to you again. What do you think?
So I think the points are pretty good, except that there's a little bit too much text still. And
Okay.
there's a lot of integration with the image as well. So maybe referring some way to arrows to refer to the image is exactly what each point is talking about.
Yeah, I think all great points. Better, still wordy, picture's not that integrated. So I totally agree. Let's go to C11. The C11's in here. C11, what do you think? Okay, too many words, just say some of them. Okay, makes sense? So, yeah, what I like about this is you've told me why. So finally, Dr. Tolman and I are actually trying to tell you why you should care. It's still too wordy. It has some references. We're actually starting to try to give some credibility to our arguments. Maybe this, who is this? This is a real thing I found online, but it's some law practice in San Diego. I'm not really sure it was a very credible resource. Probably better than nothing, but maybe we could do better than that. Okay, what about this? You're out driving at night. It's difficult to see. You're not quite sure where you're going. We're going to help you. Okay, we're going to use it at night. You need a map with high contrast and low brightness so you can see what's going on. Better night vision, safer driving. That's why we need night mode. What is it technically? Darker backgrounds, thinner lines, still high contrast but lower brightness. Tested, 4 out of people preferred it, 5 people preferred it to Google Maps. Okay, so what do you think?
You like it better? So I see
someone up there. Okay, let's go to G07. Lean into the mic and see a big moment.
Yeah, okay, so that's a good idea. So maybe I actually show, instead of just the night, I show an accident, animated, have some animations, maybe there's an accident. Maybe
Maybe even a sound effect that might wake people up, shock them. Good use of unexpected. So I agree, that actually is kind of a missed opportunity. Sounds like you like this one better though, and you're saying, oh, I could have gone further. So yeah, I would agree, it's a lot better. It's a different way of trying to make you care. Instead of quoting an expert, it's more story-based. You're driving at night, it's hard to see, okay? It's less wordy, it's more simple, less chance of my audience just reading and not paying attention to me. Here's another take on this. Okay, let me go back one.
Have you ever been driving at night? It's late, it's dark, it's raining, you can't really see, you're lost, you're trying to look at your phone, and you know this is fundamentally a dangerous thing. It's very stressful, and that is why we're going to bring in a night mode to help you. Show you what you need to get out of that situation without destroying your night vision, without creating a danger. Okay, so I kind of gave you my thoughts on this. This is another way to do that same thing. You're going through a presentation, you're used to a whole bunch of slides that have some pictures, some words on them. We just get to a slide that is all picture. What does that do? It's a little bit unexpected. The audience has to stop, they look at the picture, and then they look at you. Like, what the heck? What's the picture about? So refocuses the audience on us. And a good thing to do with us in this particular one is that I tell a story. Okay, story about, doesn't have to necessarily be about me, it can be about, we've all lived this. We're all driving, we've had situations where we're lost, it's dark. People put themselves in the scenarios. We're using some of those basic stick principles to wake them up, make them listen. One of my former graduate students, now a prof at Cornell, would do this to great effect. He was a great presenter, and in many of his presentations, which are very technical, they're about computer chip and design and software algorithms, he would find an analogy to something,
like freeways or road signs, etc. And he put up entire slides that were just a picture, and it would make everybody look at him and pay attention. So it can be a really good effect. Okay, so here's another one. It's almost the same as what I just showed you. It's a night mode feature. It's the same content as I had before. But what I've done, we put a header. The header is now in blue. And we put some clever little things at the bottom. You know, a little logo of a map, our names, we're Team 300. What do you think of these additions? Do you like them? Do you not like them? So a slightly different tweak on a slide that you already saw. So let me unhook this. What do you think? So just tell us whether you like them or not. We're not going to be offended. I'm not going to tell you whether this is Dr. Tallman's idea or my idea, so just be honest. So do you like these additions or not? Somebody's got to have an opinion. So who likes them? You go, yeah, give me that. Okay, so one person likes them. Anybody not like them? Okay, few people don't like them. Okay, so why do you like them? Maybe I'll just click your button if you, there you go. So what do you like about them? Okay, so you like them because it's reminding us about the team. It kind of creates a sort of slogan that I show over and over again. The idea is I show this on every slide. And yeah, that can work. Okay, so Team C07, you didn't like it. So let me turn you on. Why do you not like it? Just lean into the mic and go ahead. Okay, so you just find that they're not that relevant, right? So yeah, be careful with this. There's no real right or wrong, but I often find, again, when I'm at conferences and people are presenting, sometimes slide decks are kind of cluttered with, you know, U of T logo and Betts Corp and Tallman Co, right? And we can have too much stuff that shows up on every single slide, and we're using some of our real estate to kind of hit kind of a repeated logo. You can have, you know, one thing. So maybe we put this in if we really want to highlight that, but be careful. I'd be careful about putting a lot of, I personally prefer a pretty clean slide design where I don't put a lot of logos on everything, but you can, some people like it, but I wouldn't put too much.
It could be effective like on the opening slide.
Oh yeah, to do it once.
Introduce a fashion after a fashion, introduce one another, and call them or that. Then we get it to show itself. So we need to keep repeating. Yeah, totally agree. So doing it once can be a great idea. Every single slide, be careful how much you put on there. I had one undergraduate summer researcher who hit a level of this I've never seen before or since. So he's giving a final presentation about what he'd done in the summer in my research group. So it's to all my grad students and the other summer students. And he was working with a laser researcher in physics. So he's building a control system for a laser that they're using for some high frequency laser experiments. And so he had put an animated GIF as his logo that was in the bottom right-hand corner. So it's on every single slide. There was an animated GIF of a cat chasing a laser pointer. It was the most distracting thing I've ever seen, right? Every single slide, everybody's just watching this cat chase a laser pointer instead of paying any attention to him. Okay, do not do that. Okay, so you find yourself heading that way, that's way over the top, don't do it. You know, maybe you could have done it once as a little joke on one slide, but having it on every single slide is very distracting. Okay. Final slide in Q&A. You end your presentation, and you know there's Q&A. Say, thank you very much. Any questions? Okay, so that's one option. Here's another option. Thank you very much. We're adaptive map. Creating safety through environmental adaptation. Happy to take your questions. Which of these final slides do you like better? Right? Questions or this one? And let's see, I'm going to take off this. Let's see if anybody's brave enough to hit their mic and say what they think. So you can go for option one, clean questions, or option two, these pictures. Okay, so let's go F07. We're on the air.
Yeah,
makes
makes
sense.
sense. I personally prefer this one too. So Ken, what do you think?
Yeah, it will remind the audience of all the things you've been talking about and give them something to kind of generate some ideas as you're in the Q&A.
Yeah. Yes, this is up for a long time also, right? There are several minutes of Q&A. This is reinforcing the final message while you're in that. More interesting, get your message through. Okay, let's talk about handling Q&A. Okay, so actually, before we do that, are there any questions from anybody about oral presentation one or anything else? So any questions out there? Scanning, maybe we're super clear.
E7.
Sorry, I didn't quite catch it because I was fumbling with the mic.
Could you say that again?
Okay, do you want to take that one, Ken? Or?
Well, yeah, if you're.
And if you want, you come over here, Ken, I'll
citing
finish on.
a scholarly source, good to let people know that it's not your idea, it's actually evidence from a study. And you should be either citing that or and including it in a list of references at the end. You'll have a final slide of your list of research references. Or you could put it at the very bottom of the slide if you wanted to, the information, where you got your information from. But yeah, whenever you're referring to any research sources, let your audience know that it's somebody else's idea. And you don't necessarily need to name the source, but at least research shows, and then we can find the source in your list of references if we're interested in doing so.
It's E13. Looks like another question. Sure, I'll just repeat that. I think Dr. Tolman's the best person to answer that, but they're asking whether the questions will be directed to one team member or to the whole team in the Q&A. Maybe, Ken, you want to come over to the lectern mic, and that might make it easier to get.
Well, it could go either way. It could be that they're directed to a specific student or to the whole team. Does that answer your question? Now, what do you think about my answer? Was that helpful? Or do you think I could have done a better job with that? You know, because I'll give you another answer, answer B. Answer B is that the Q&A will really be driven by the students who are present. So there'll be a team that's assigned to Q&A, and once the presenting team has finished, your CI will say, okay, team 51 questions. And usually that team 51, each member will have a question to ask the presenting team. And if a student who has presented does not have the opportunity to answer a question, then the CI might ask that specific student who hasn't yet been asked a question. Does that answer your question? Okay, good. So the first one was kind of okay, but it wasn't very informative, right? It wasn't very helpful. And so you don't want to say too much, but you want to provide an informative and kind of substantive response as concisely as possible. And while I was speaking here, did you notice Professor Betts' body language? Anyone notice?
I didn't notice. I forgot.
And these are things that I know we're all kind of, we have to be conscious. People are watching us. And if we become too casual, and that can happen in the Q&A, oh, it's not my question. Great. Well, I'll just kind of tune out. And I'll check out my cell phone and think about something else. So stay directed on your teammates answering the questions. Give them support. And that helps the audience to stay engaged as well.
Yeah, so now I'm actually looking at Dr. Tolman versus where I was just sort of wandering around aimlessly, looking back here and so on. Probably feels a little more supportive, less distracting to the audience. So, any other questions? So, okay, Ted, you're on the air. So what if you don't have the laptop HDMI port? Do you want to take this one, Ken, or do you want me to take it?
Well, you go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, I mean, laptops have this profusion of ports now. Can be very confusing. So I think it's probably a good idea for you to come very prepared for any electronic eventuality. Maybe you can find some alternatives to HDMI or practice plugging in different things. Maybe there are adapters that you could bring. All those are possible solutions. So Dr. Tolman, what do you think of that answer?
I thought that was helpful, and
Was it concise?
yeah, you maybe repeated yourself a little bit. Could have been a little more concise.
Yeah, so I would say that I sort of at the end gave some information about, yeah, bring an adapter, be prepared. But I buried the lead, in my opinion. So, I could be more concise, say, we have HDMI for sure. We can't guarantee anything else. Make sure you bring an adapter to connect to HDMI and you've tested it in advance. Okay, that would be a more concise answer. And if I was up there getting graded on Q&A, I'm going to get a better grade for that than some meandering answer that maybe at the end has some of the information you need in it. So don't bury the lead. Often in a question, you can give a short answer and then expand on it. And the short answer, if a person's bored, they already got what they want. So you're not burying the lead. A company that I've worked with, and I had my own company called Cypress Semiconductor, one of their senior engineers sent one of my engineers down to do some training on our software. And partway through the training, the senior engineer took him aside and said, all right, when I ask you a question, I want a precision answer. Yes, no, or a number. Okay, so it was like sort of a brutal experience in teaching, don't bury the lead. Right. I don't believe you can always answer questions with yes, no, or a number. He's trying to teach them, don't give me a long answer that buries the lead. Tell me the short answer. Now, I would say in this presentation where you're being judged on your Q&A skills, too short an answer might seem you haven't had taken the time to expand on the ideas, but start with the most important point.
And sometimes it's a good idea if you're not sure that you've understood the question, to ask, could you please repeat the question? That can be something that can help you to kind of create an answer in your head, give you a moment to think it through, and be sure that you actually understood the question.
Yeah, and in case that wasn't clear enough, so yeah, bring adapters, be ready for HDMI. In case your laptop doesn't work, bring it on a USB key or put it in the cloud, and your CI, in an emergency, may be able to bring it up on his or her laptops, but don't count on it.
Great answer.
So, okay, so I think for Q&A, unless there are any more questions, are there any more? One more question? Actually, I see, okay, B07, let's give you one more question. Go ahead. So the question is for the presentation, are you basing it off what you wrote in WD1 or what you actually did? You're basing it off what you actually did. So it's usually a good idea to be concrete, show some screenshots or perhaps animations, make a video of your graphics. You could have response time numbers. You could also have things that didn't go so well. You said, we wanted to do this, we didn't get it done, but here's what we learned from that. That's the kind of recovery plan. Focus on what you think is going to be most interesting. What does your audience want to hear? What's going to be most compelling about what you've done? So you don't give equal time to everything you did. Going in and saying there are 23 required features in milestone 2, let's just check them off. That's going to be kind of boring, right? It's going to be more interesting and focus on what you think makes you distinctive.
Yeah, and in 8 to 10 minutes, how many features can you realistically include? 3, 4 is probably as far as most teams will want to go.
Yeah, and your CI is looking for, at the end of your presentation, can he or she remember anything about it? So use those made mistake principles. You can only make probably a limited number of ideas stick in that person's head. But that's your challenge. Do they remember your team and what you did? Okay, so tips for Q&A. Sometimes the question is unclear, so you can clarify it. And then a good technique for that is say, I think you're asking this, is that right? Good skill for your whole career. People often spend a long time answering the wrong question. You can't ask, you don't want to probe for the answer. When you are asking that question, do you think the answer would be made to stick, or do you think the answer would be standard template library? Okay, your CI knows you're just trying to get me to answer the question. That's not going to work. But in an honest, I don't really understand, do you do this to that, that's fine. And then we'd already talked about this. Give a succinct, organized answer. So it's not just be correct, be organized, be succinct, start with the most important points, so it's easy to follow. Okay, that's all I had.
I've got a few, but you know what? I don't think we have enough time to do the exercise. So maybe we'll wait on that. One thing I'd say with just an additional point with the Q&A is that, as I've said, each team is going to be assigned to do Q&A for certain presenting teams. So you're going to want to have each team member in the Q&A team have a question ready to go. So this is something to be paying attention to when you're watching the presenting team, trying to develop a meaningful question that will engage the entire audience present. And that's that takes a bit of skill.
Another thing you may want to do is you're practicing. So I mentioned, I like to practice by putting the laptop right where it's going to be, speaking to it, timing myself, and just keeping going, right? So I'm practicing that skill of not stumbling. Initially, I might just stop if the slide's really confusing and rework it. But as I'm practicing more, I'm going to practice, I'm going all the way through, no matter how bad it gets, so I get used to that. Another good thing you can do is have a team member videotape you. If you want to see, what do I look like? How am I moving my hands? Am I doing anything distracting? Am I speaking clearly, etc.? Having a person videotape you is really good. So,
and it may be a good idea that when you get to OP1, you arrange with other teams who are there to videotape each other. Just use your phone, and that'll be a nice way to look back at your presentation, and maybe you learn a few things that that you can improve upon for oral presentation too. So that would be a good thing to do.
Yeah, definitely get together as a team, practice interacting with each other, give each other feedback on what are you doing. In my research group, when a student's going to give a presentation at a company or a conference, we usually do a dry run. Student presents for typically 15 or 20 minutes, and then we usually spend an hour to an hour and a half kind of disassembling the whole presentation, going through slide by slide and everything that student did. So, the first time they go through it, they're like, what the heck just happened? But it's just part of the group culture. That's how you get better at presenting. People have to give you a lot of feedback. So your teammates can give that to you. And it's nice to do before you present because you can actually adapt to it. Your CI will give you feedback that you can take into account on OP2, but it's nice to work on it before you do OP1.
Yeah, and even if you don't video record your kind of rehearsals, you could record the audio, so you can listen back and check out your pace, see if you're racing through, if you're too slow. You can check to see if you're audible, if there's good enunciation, and that's a good way to help to practice as you're preparing for your final presentation.
Yeah. Figure out what the main points are in OP1 as well. So maybe you've got some really cool features, you want to focus on them. Maybe you've got great response time. If you have great response time, get some measurements, right? Rather than saying our response time is really good, maybe show a video, because that'll highlight that, and some numbers. And maybe show progress. Here's what we had when we had a very basic implementation. Here's how we improved it through a few steps, which are described at a kind of high level of abstraction that your CI can understand them, and here are the numbers. That's more compelling than say, we really wanted to be responsive, and look, we're really responsive. But I didn't show you many numbers, and I didn't give you any sense of how that was achieved.
And do you think some teams might want to show their map in action, like show a video, rather than just the screenshots?
Yeah. So video can be compelling. It's probably much safer to embed a video in your PowerPoint presentation rather than trying to do a live demo. Live demo is very dangerous. You know, you have a problem with VNC or something and it goes down. But you can embed a video and basically pictures are more concrete, but for a program like this, a video can be even more concrete. So that can be a good option.
And you'll have a chance next week to bring in some slides to your CI meeting and get a chance to present a little bit in your CI meeting, get some feedback from your CI, from your teammates. So this will be a good opportunity next week in the CI meetings to move forward with your presentation, get some slides built and get some feedback. Good.
I think that's it for today.
Okay,
Okay, so good luck finishing milestone 2 and then on to op1.